So, Owen, today we're talking about the taking of Pelham 123, which I think is one of the livelier action movies that we've seen, at least so far in this summer of action coming out. It's actually a remake or an update of a movie that came out in the 1970s. It's a cat and mouse game about John Travolta as a guy who was holding a subway car hostage, and Denzel Washington as the transit authority guy who's working in order to stop this hostage situation.
Now look up at your screen and you tell me what you see. Do you see what I've done?
I see it.
One car is much more manageable than 10 with the manpower I got. Mr. Motorman's going to tell you all about it. Tell him what we got here.
They got hostages, lots of them, and they got machine guns.
Yeah, that's right. Now, you check me. Do you understand that?
I check, I understand.
What's striking to me is to even attempt to do a movie about terrorism or hostages in New York in a post-9/11 world. And I think that under the circumstances, this movie pulled off something that I didn't think could be done. It was so set in the 70s in the original. It was so much a piece of what New York was like when the subways were scary that I didn't think it could be done. And I thought Tony Scott pulled it off pretty well.
Well, I think this was actually a good idea to remake this movie. I mean, subway terror in our time, it seems like a timely thing. I actually didn't think about 9/11 or the post-9/11 world much because I felt this movie was just kind of a hermetic action fantasy. I feel like Tony Scott has almost gone beyond making action movies. Now he's making action paintings.
He is doing action paintings, it's true.
I did like the performances in this film, and it certainly has a hurtling energy that carries you along. But what I thought was missing from it is that this story where you have this kind of insane hijacker who's decided to take a bunch of subway...
Travolta being very insane, by the way.
Yeah, and Travolta being very good at that.
What is the going rate for a New York City hostage today? You think $1 million is too much? I do. I think it's corny. Now get your calculator out. You got one?
And there's sort of a question of how does he hope to get away with this? And I thought that the movie never really answered that question. I didn't think it had any procedural intrigue beyond the fact that he's asking for $10 million.
What do you got?
That comes out to $10 million plus 1 cent.
Oh, that is a deal. Now you call the mayor and you tell him the price. And then you tell him I want $100,000 $100 bills. You got that?
I got it. What about the 1 cent?
Oh, you keep that 1 cent. That's your broker fee.
I just felt it was a kind of living in the moment thriller where it was Tony Scott's style that was supposed to carry you through, but I thought it really failed to generate any real suspense.
What I liked, I did, of course, these two guys together, I thought they were well matched one to the other. They were both thoughtful grown-ups, actually, in an action movie rather than young kids in an action movie. The thing that struck me more was New York as a character, New York in the Tony Scott version of New York, which is a kind of hyper pumped up kind of New York. And the camera work itself was at some points actually nausea-inducing.
Well, one of the things I think it doesn't really play off at all is just subway terror, the original movie. And this movie doesn't have to be just like that. It can be its own thing.
It's hard to remind people that in the 70s, the subways were that scary.
Yeah, they were. And I went back and I watched the original, and I was surprised to see that a lot of it is actually very quiet. You're on this subway train, and you really have these interactions among the hijackers and the passengers, and that's all very interesting. Here, they really shifted it more to the cat and mouse game, as you said. I thought that that was pretty good to the extent that Travolta and Washington play off each other with expert timing, and there's some good lines. At the same time, there's something kind of corny about the idea that the Travolta character is such a psycho that after a while, he doesn't even care that much about bringing off his plot.
Acting,
he
right?
just wants to redeem the Denzel Washington character because he's some kind of lapsed Catholic
right,
with
there's
a
all
sin
this
in his
religious
background.
hoo-ha that's thrown in that doesn't really pay off. It's interesting, too, that at this point they need to have a hostage negotiator, which, of course, back in the 70s they wouldn't have had.
Who is this?
This is Lieutenant Caminetti. I'm with the NYPD hostage negotiation team. I'd like to talk to you about the situation that we're in.
Yeah, well, I want to talk to Garber.
John Turturro comes in as a hostage negotiator, but one guy who I think redeems himself and also feels very much of the moment is James Gandolfini coming in and playing the mayor. I think that he has really... just as Edie Falco has made a leap to being not Mrs. Soprano anymore, I think that this really moves him to making a leap to playing a fully realized character who feels very much like a modern-day mayor of New York City.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun because he makes this larger-than-life mayor character kind of recognizable human being. I guess the thing that I was missing from this movie is that the original really does have so much New York atmosphere, and New York's a different place now, and I wanted this to have a different New York atmosphere, or maybe not a New York atmosphere at all, just a feeling that it was capturing something about urban life. But I feel like that's all overwhelmed by Tony Scott's style. Tony Scott's style is really like about itself now. It's about all these flashes of light and all this movement. The images look very realistic, but he never gets a rhythm going, like on the subway cars, that really feels like what would be happening there. And because it's so unrealistic, I'm not drawn in as much to even the kind of popcorn version of terror thrills that I would want. I didn't think this was a bad movie, but it really wasn't the home run that I was wanting
No, I don't think
be.
it was either. I'm just fascinated as to how you even attempt to make any terror movie in New York City now as summer entertainment. Really, I think that that's quite a challenge. I think you're right that he just sort of made it about the choreography of this act happens and that act happens and these two guys come together. But I gotta say, as a basic summer action movie, it's a local, not an express, but I think it pulled out of the station pretty well, if I want to use all these metaphors. I think it did all right.
To be honest, Mr. Garber has gone home.
Put Garber on the line or I kill the motorman.
I guarantee you, Mr. Wright, that I am the best person for you to be talking to right now. Just give me a moment and I'll explain why.
You're always going to be the first one to go.